Hey everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today we're talking with Wendy Brookhouse, financial advisor and money coach, and founder of Blackstar Wealth. She helps people get to their financial goals faster and easier. I'm super excited about this because I know that financial management and wealth creation are really important to all of us, but we're not all good at it. So, with that, welcome, Wendy. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks thanks so much for having me. You're right, it is a weird topic, isn't it, to talk about money sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the elephant in the room. I think, people
Mhm.
don't always want to talk about it, but it's super important to all of us, whether we, have aspirations to be titans of industry or just want to be comfortable. The fact of the matter
Yeah.
is, you can't avoid the importance of it in our lives. So, I know that you're going to be sharing with us some amazing tips, but you have a fascinating story. So, I wanted to start by asking you about your background. Can you give us
Mm.
what your career path was and what led you to where you are now?
Well, that's interesting. I think, I don't think in my 20s, I ever thought I would be an entrepreneur. I had really good jobs, I was happy with them, and then I was, vice president of an internet company when, the tech, crash happened, back in the early 2000s, and so, yes, I'm dating myself, but it did force me to go out and do some stuff. So I started out, doing some business consulting. So I did, strategic plans, business plans, marketing plans, helped with some of the implementations. And then I had a client in my industry, and I realized, I do have a finance degree. So maybe I should pull that out of the cupboard and start using that. And so, what really made me different going in, I think, into the financial industry is that I had that consulting background of working with business owners at a different level. And also, I came in the industry as an independent right from the get go, which meant I was basically almost all on my own from the start,
Okay.
which meant a couple of things. One, I was never told what to do or how to do it by any big company. So I feel like I was able to develop products and services and the methodologies really that truly helped clients where they were. I wasn't being told, you need to sell this or you only need to deal with these kinds of folks. I could actually go, I think they need help with this. So that's where I'm going.
That's great. And obviously, then you were able to carve out a path that way. It's funny that you
Mm.
mentioned the tech crash. I actually, in my story, dating myself as well, I was working for an IT consulting firm, and they
Mm.
were West Coast based, but they had opened East Coast operations, and I was one of the initial hires on the East Coast. We had built it up. We were about a year out of IPO, and
Yeah.
I felt like my star was on the rise. I was young, I was making really good money. I had two promotions in 14 months, and then almost like a light switch, the entire thing turned off. The bubble burst, and then the company just couldn't get clients to pay the fees anymore that we were
Mm.
charging. We ended up having to lay off a bunch of people. I personally had to lay off 150 consultants, and then eventually, of course, my turn came. They shut
Yeah.
down all the East Coast operations, and so it's everything. I mean, the idea of security in that regard is an illusion. I mean, you just never really know
Agree.
what's around the corner and what's going to come next.
I
So
like how you said that illusion because a lot of folks go, well, entrepreneurs, it's so risky. You never know. And there you just illustrated sometimes working even for good big companies can be risky.
yeah, I mean, I think honestly, really, your security is based on your skill set and what you're capable
Mm.
of doing. My father actually was the corporate guy, so he was worked for an insurance company for 25 years. It's back in the days where you actually got a pension. You typically worked somewhere and you stayed there your whole
Mm-hmm.
career. If you
Yeah.
moved and you weren't at a company for 20 years, any other employer would say, well, what's wrong? I mean, you couldn't stay
Yeah.
employed for more than 20 years. Nowadays, if you're in a job more than 2.6 years, people want to know what's wrong with you. Why aren't you trying to climb up and be more ambitious? But the
Yeah.
point of the story is this guy had worked his whole life, given everything he had to this company. 25 years in, literally on the day of his 25th anniversary party, his boss was flying down from Philadelphia to lay him off. his colleagues got wind of it and said, you can't do this today. We got a cake. He's getting his watch. Like, we've got all this stuff. So the guy waited 2 weeks, came down and laid him off 2 weeks later. And so again, for him, he did the corporate route, and that was, insecure as well. You just never know what you're going to get. So yeah, that's a crazy situation. But I know that one of the things you talk about is growth versus value in our
Mm.
business. Can you give us an
Yeah.
idea of what that is and what the implications are of that?
Sure. And I think it actually all ties back into your work-life balance. So it's kind of a nice question there. So when we look at value versus growth, as a business owner, sometimes we are tempted to do a lot of the things ourselves because we can make more profit. We don't have to teach someone else how to do things. It's faster to do it myself. Of all the messages we tell ourselves about why. So that actually may, at one point or another, it's going to introduce this plateau in the growth of your company. And so profits are great, revenue is great, but the third wheel or the third leg to that stool is how valuable is your business. Okay, so the how valuable is your business, the more involved you are in the day to day, the more that every decision has to flow through you. You have to look at everything. You know all your clients by name super well. These are all indications that you are perhaps too entrenched and you're going to end up actually being the bottleneck to your business. And so when you look at it from a freedom perspective, the more we can help you free yourself from all the day to day and maybe step more into a CEO role versus a technician, you're actually building a more valuable business. And that can be a more valuable business that's more sellable, can actually be a big part of your life after work from a funding perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction. I actually read an article, it was a few months ago, and it was
Yeah.
about exit strategies. And one of the interesting
Mm.
things is they chronicled this guy. I forget what exact industry he was in, but he had built this business. It was successful. He was making a couple $100,000 a year. He was really happy.
Yeah.
He said, this is awesome because now I'm getting ready to retire. I'm going to sell this off. I'm going to get a windfall of cash, and then I can ride
Mhm.
off into the sunset. And to his horror, when he tried to get valuations on his company and get other people to buy it, what everybody realized is he was the person making every single thing in the business work. If you took him out of the equation, it didn't work. So what
Yeah.
anybody else was looking at is, I'm just buying myself a job. If I
Exactly.
take over this role, I got to work all the time to make it go. So
I just want to layer in a little bit because I think that the way we talk about our business sometimes can lead to that. If we think of it's our baby, and it has to be nurtured and you know what I mean, and loved, whatever. But couple of things. One, your baby needs to grow up and be able to go off to school and not need you as much anymore. And I think also it changes how you are intentionally and deliberately growing your business if you look at it as an asset, right? So if we look at your business as an asset and it's part of your retirement strategy, is this asset class is your business, well, then we have to figure out how to make it worth the most and do all the things we need to do that and do financial planning to make sure you're getting the most after tax money into your retirement plan. And so I think when we look at it from that perspective and shift that language from baby to asset, then you're going to make different decisions about it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction. People start off, and usually they're starting somewhere from a place of passion. So
Mhm.
because of that, and you're building this from the ground up, you feel connected to it. You sort of, your ego, your emotions are all tied to it. But I think it is important at some point to be able to make sort of a mental shift where you say, all right, where do I want this to go? Because if I
Yeah.
want to be tied to this forever, then that's fine. I can, put my arms around it and hug it really tight. But if I want to be able to ever extricate myself or have an exit strategy, I'm going to need to look at this from an investor's perspective to see what would
Yep.
make it more valuable. So, yeah, I think that's a really, really important distinction. Can you tell me, when you work with entrepreneurs, business owners, what are the
Mhm.
biggest mistakes that you see that they make regarding their finances?
I think some of the biggest mistakes is actually maybe putting too much trust in that they can sell their business. I would love that every business owner that sale is actually all lifestyle money, right? It's
Yeah.
all the gravy, so that everything else that they've done and built in terms of all their, um, retirement planning options, your Roth IRAs or RSPs, depending on where you're listening, that type of vehicle, top them up. Use what you can so that you can retire without it, but yet at the same time, this can be the thing that, maybe it moves you to the front of the plane by being able to have a successful exit.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Um, you created something, and I'm really intrigued by this. You created something called the Entrepreneurial Couples Collective, which I
Yep.
think is a unique and fascinating thing. Can you tell us about that? What that is and what it's for?
Sure, absolutely. So, my husband and I work in the business together. And what we have found is that there's not a ton of resources available for people who work with their significant other in their business. How do you balance life at home and life at work? How do you make it such that, you guys are all paddling in the same directions in all the places that matter, and having some, I guess boundaries would be a good word. Like, my husband and I will be on the weekend and we're having what we'll call a free day. And all of a sudden, one of us will have a business idea and we'll go, "Hey, are we having a free day or is this a work day?" And then you get to make a decision, right? Okay, no, I'll hold off on that till Monday. Or, you know what? This is so important, we got to break it. But you know what I mean? Like, at least it's a conscious decision making that we're making about, this is supposed to be our free time for us to rejuvenate and, just be in a better spot. So,
Yeah, of course. I mean, I know as a solopreneur, just doing it by yourself, it's hard with the boundaries. Things
yeah.
blur. A lot of people work from home, so in particular,
Mhm.
you then have that spillover as well. When you separate and you're in a different office space, you don't have dishes in the sink, you don't have laundry, you don't have pets that have needs. All of those things are outside your purview, so you can't worry about them even if you wanted to. When you're in your own
Mhm.
home and you're doing it, even if you have a home office, it's different. The salesperson still knocks on the door, the phone still rings, and all these other things happen. So it's difficult. So I can imagine when you then integrate a relationship into that. Also, I
Yep.
know in business school, one of the classes I actually took was about family business, and it
Mhm.
was fascinating to me. There were a few things about it that really were the phenomenon were fascinating because if you looked at the two extremes, the family businesses that are run well can really be amazing, and it can be a great bonding experience and everybody in the
Mhm.
family. But on the flip side of that, I mean, it can destroy a family. It can destroy relationships. There were stories where there were these companies that were really big and really successful, and as it got passed through the generations, as soon as you got the second generation removed, so if the founders, their kids
Mhm.
usually understood the sacrifice that went into it because
Yeah.
they saw their parents doing it. As soon as you got to their kids, they were so far removed from all of the stuff that went into it. All they cared about was how much money can I get from this? And so
Yeah.
you had all these weird dynamics in play, and sometimes people would fight over it, even though they don't even really have any right to it. I mean, they had nothing to do with building it or whatever. So I know with like a husband and wife or spouses or whatever, that's got to be a particular challenge because we have our arguments and quarrels over daily life, let alone business stuff, and certainly I can see it blurs the boundaries. So that helps people sort of manage that and navigate that.
I
Like,
think it's important too, because you brought up a good point. It really does boil down to communications. So, whether you're in a couple in a business or you were bringing your own business and you're like, I'd really like my kids to take over, right? My number one tip is, don't complain about your business at the dinner table. Because, okay, you're gonna come home every night and say how bad it was, and then you want them to take that over? Like, come on, right?
yeah,
So, setting out some expectations, but it does come down to, for family business in particular, communication, right? Having family councils, having conversations, having a methodology for bringing your kids up into the business and training them and having the values of the company and things like that. because honestly, the numbers are not great, like 50% fail in G2, generation 2, and then it's even worse every year, as you say, as they get further and further away from maybe that the passion and the why, right? So
Yeah.
it's how do you in how do you communicate that and infuse that into the next generations? And as a result of that, anytime I'm dealing with a family who wants to pass it down, I'm like, let's make sure you're set first. This business cannot be You cannot plan your retirement based on this business continuing to be successful. You have to assume the worst.
That's actually a really, really good point because I think that would be a very easy mistake to make. Hey, this thing's
Mm,
been running great. We're making money. We can support our lifestyle. What
mm,
could possibly go wrong? We love our kids. We trust our kids. We'll have them run it. But if they
yeah,
aren't connected in the same way, or if they make mistakes, you just
yeah,
never know, and that can put you in jeopardy. So certainly that makes a lot of sense in terms of understanding what you need to be able to get out of it and having a plan for that. The other point I love that you brought up is sort of the dinner table conversation, because I think that as parents oftentimes we underestimate the amount of impact what we say and how we say it affects our kids and the way they think and the way that they feel. And I recognize this because even when I'm with friends and they have kids, and I've known the kids since they were babies, right? So they had no ideas, they had no opinions, they had no, anything at that age. I see them as young adults, and
hmm
they're in some ways the spitting image of their parents in terms of their belief system, in terms of the
yeah,
way, and so the way they see the world. And so if you are constantly griping about your business, which believe me, everybody has gripes about business. I mean, entrepreneurship is hard. So you're going to always have, but if that's what they see and they don't
yeah,
see the benefits and they don't see the positive of it, exactly. I mean, how are you going to feel good about wanting to take that over? You might feel the pressure because my parents
yeah.
want me to do this, but at the same
hmm
time, I don't really want to do this because it sounds terrible. So yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of
And I'd
sense.
like to take that conversation and that modeling to another discussion point, if it's okay, and that's
Absolutely.
around money mindset. So, one of the things I talk about sometimes when I'm dealing with clients, business owners or not, is you may or may not have been taught about money in an out point way. This is what this is. This is what interest is. This is, you know what I mean? Um, but you were taught, and that is very much about how did they talk about money at the dinner table. Sometimes we got that messaging that money doesn't grow on trees, and that, people who have a lot of money are bad people, and this sets up money beliefs in the kids that will manifest later on in life in terms of how they deal with money. So I really encourage people to actually start thinking about what are their money patterns? What are the lessons they learned at the dinner table and they're not even aware of? And so I ask three questions for that. And I ask, what's your first memory of money? What did your parents or significant people in your life growing up do with money that you don't want to do? And what did they do that you want to copy? And that will help unleash a lot of things, right? Because especially like if you were taught that all debt is bad, and here you are as a business owner with opportunities that you're trying to self-fund because debt is bad, versus being using it as a tool in select cases because you've done the analysis and it makes sense. But if you have the money mindset that all debt is bad, that may be holding you back.
That's a good point. I mean, it's hard to grow anything without investing something in it first. And,
Yeah.
the time piece is pretty intuitive, I think, to entrepreneurs. They get, okay, I've got to invest time if I want to be able to build this thing.
Mhm.
But the money piece can be scary. If you think about
Yep.
buying a franchise, they might be okay with it because there's a name brand attached to it, so they sort of
Mhm.
get that. But when it's their own personal thing or they're carving their own path, it's a little
Mhm.
scarier because you don't know. But at the same time, if you can't grow without it, what is your alternative?
Right.
So
Yeah, yeah.
the belief system there, I think, is important for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and that means that when you're at the dinner table with your kids, if you understand your money mindset, you may actually be able to then converse in a way that you can start influencing your kids' money mindset so that their feelings about money are where you'd like them to be.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I also think it's important to teach kids to be critical thinkers,
Yeah.
and to find their own path with things, and learn.
Mhm.
Don't take everything for at face value. Do your own research. Do your own learning and everything else. So that way you can make decisions that are informed, that make sense for you, and they aren't just sort of knee jerk reactions or
Yeah.
conditioning. And so yeah,
Mhm.
I think those are all really important lessons. Some people are making a lot of money. Would you
Mhm.
consider them wealthy, or what is the difference between just making a lot of money and actual wealth?
Hmm. I think it actually ties back into some of your comments at the front end about balancing life and business. If you have a ton of money but no time or space to actually enjoy it with your family, your friends, your community, what have you, are you truly wealthy? And, I love that ad, what is that proverb or some sort of saying around, you work really, really hard, but you don't spend any time on your health, and then you spend all your money on your health, right? So I look back and I go, do you think Steve Jobs would have given up all his money for his health?
Yeah,
Right? So I think being truly wealthy encompasses all the parts of your life and not just money. Money is a tool, can fuel a lot of fun things and fuel a lot of stuff, but if it's a tool, being wealthy isn't just having the money. It's a real mindset around all the other pieces, in my opinion.
yeah. I love that approach because I really think looking at our lives holistically is really important.
Mm,
I know a lot of people in a lot of different situations. I know people that make a lot of money that actually are not particularly happy. I know
yeah.
people that make very little that wake up every day with a smile on their face and excited
Mhm.
about life. And I think, it's interesting because if you sacrifice too hard and too many things for one, whether it's money
Mm,
or anything else, you do run that risk of sort of falling out of balance and having that problem. I know for me, one of the interesting parts of my origin story as an entrepreneur is the fact that I was actually in business school getting my MBA, and I was going to go into management consulting. And I had called home one night, and my wife was home with our older son. She was reading him a bedtime story. I was on break at class because I was working full time, but I was going to school at night. And I remember feeling, sort of empty about missing that. And I thought to
yeah.
myself, geez, I'm a few months from graduation here, but the path I'm on is going to put me in a situation where I'm creating a great lifestyle for my family, but I'm going to be living out of hotels and flying around the country on planes. I'm not going to be part of it. So I
Mm,
finished the degree, but instead of going into that, I actually started my own business with that as the backdrop because I wanted that flexibility and freedom. And my goal was never, to make the most money that any entrepreneur ever did. It was to have a lifestyle where I could be present and be able to
mhm.
do the things that I would want to do, because those years you don't get back. Once those are gone, you can't say to your kids, well, listen, I made a ton of money while you were young, and now that you're an adult and starting your own life, I really want to spend a lot of time together. They've got their own stuff to do now. They're going to go off and and build their own lives. And so thankfully, that's something I recognize, and for me that mattered. And so I think your point is really important about the fact that we need to look at things from more than just a pure financial perspective when we think about wealth and success and those kinds
Absolutely.
of things.
Well,
Um,
one of the things I like that you've done, what you did instinctively is something I tell all new entrepreneurs is that don't start with your business, start with your life. What do you want your life to be like? And then build your business around that versus building your business and trying to have a life around that. Because that's what I did. And I'm still trying to put the boundaries in place to start living a more robust life because of that.
yeah, and I think that's it's common because of the fact that we usually start a business with the idea that we want the freedom, but it's based on a passion. So we don't think
Mm,
about anything beyond what we're doing now and where we hope it'll go. but we don't
Yeah.
consider what the implications are going to be. And once you start going down that road, it's difficult to make changes.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to re-engineer your entire business to
Yeah.
put it in a way where it makes sense. Thankfully, the one advantage I think everybody has nowadays that we didn't have 20 years ago or whatever is with automation and technology and how small the world is, there are so
Yeah.
many more opportunities to be able to leverage technology,
Hmm.
automation, other resources, and other people to be able to get done what we need to get done.
Totally agree.
So we talked a little bit about thinking about our businesses from an outside investor perspective so we can maximize their value.
Hmm.
You have the Business Value Amplifier program. Is that what that's all about? And who is that geared for?
Right. So that's geared for entrepreneurs who are, whether they're 2 years or 20 years away from selling their business, but it's a goal. They want to transition the business. And so what we do, we start off with let's take a snapshot and get an initial idea of what the value of your business is today. We will give you a score on the 8 drivers of value. And then what we do is over the course of 8 weeks is deep dive on each one of those drivers. And it's
Okay.
in a group setting because I love when people get together and actually hear what other entrepreneurs are doing, because then they start to realize, hey, I'm not alone. This is not the first time this has been done. And you never know what nuggets they're going to share. And then at the end, we have another one on one where I'm helping them build out their action plan so that they can decide exactly what their next initiative will be. And we can actually show them through scenario analysis which initiatives will add the most value to their business. So it gives them some real tools to actually be intentional and deliberate about building the value.
Yeah, that's fantastic because I think
Yeah,
understanding what you need to do it and then taking the action to do it is great.
absolutely.
And I also think the what you talked about in terms of the connection and seeing other entrepreneurs, the biggest regret that I have about my entrepreneurial journey is I did it too much by myself. And
Okay.
you find these problems and you feel isolated and you feel alone, like, geez,
Mm.
as an entrepreneur, I'm supposed to have all the answers. I'm supposed to be brilliant. I'm supposed to be able to do this and create that. Why am I struggling? Why is this hard? And then you open up your eyes and you start to look at other people and you're like, wait a minute, they had that problem too, and so did they, and so did they. And if I had just communicated, if I had just
Mhm.
connected with other people, I might have been able to find answers to these issues far easier and with far less
Yes,
frustration and loneliness. And I think doing that in a group setting is very powerful for that reason, because you
very.
start to realize that we're all sort of in this together.
Well, and I'd like to focus in on something you said there was around, as entrepreneurs, we need to be okay with asking for help, and we need to be okay with we don't know everything. I did my MBA as well, and I still remember what I wrote on my entrance essay. And I just said, I think education is about questions, learning the right set of questions. And I said, I'm ready for my next set of questions. And so that's what I look at, is because the answers sometimes are changing.
Yeah.
Like if you look at taxes and all those other things, every year those rules are changing. So having them all memorized this year, it's just changing next year. So just having but knowing the right question to ask and where to go find the answer is probably more important than knowing the answer half the time.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And I also think it changes the paradigm in the way that you see yourself, because instead of feeling inadequate because you don't
Mhm.
have all the answers, you feel more empowered because you realize it's not so much about knowing what the answer is, but knowing how to find it or what the question is to ask to get the
Yeah.
answer. And
Yeah.
I think that's a great distinction. I really do. So I noticed that you also have a thing called the bottleneck to breakthrough. Can you tell us what that challenge is and who it's for?
Sure. It's for all entrepreneurs who are kind of, I call it being stuck in business prison sometimes, and we actually built the prison ourselves. So it really is about that piece of how do you free yourself from the day to day, right? How do you not become the bottleneck? And so it is a 5 day challenge. We just do it an hour a day. It's free. We do it over Zoom. And basically, what we're trying to do is build build a picture and then start to deal with some of the things that's holding you back so that by the end of the week, you have a full on plan about, okay, here's where I'm going next. Here's what I'm going to delegate. Here's how I'm going to delegate that. And start to pare some of those things off you so that you have space to think about how you want to grow your business, that you're not, you know, day after day on a checklist, right?
Yeah, yeah. I've got the revolving checklist. Some of the items keep moving. One more day. One more day. You can't do everything.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I also think that if you have hired anybody, whether that is an independent contractor, an employee, however that came, you have some baggage and we have to unpack that because we have to figure out what are the things that from a mindset perspective have started to grow within you because of things that didn't work or worked or what have you, so that you can really formulate a good go forward strategy that gets you where you want to go.
That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
total sense. So I noticed another thing. You have a lot of stuff going on here. So I noticed you also have the Total Wealth Blueprint. Can you tell us what that is all about?
Well, that's when we combine the business value amplifier with individualized, personalized, customized. Let's figure out the blueprint of how we're going to get you to the finish line. Like, really understanding how much do you need to accumulate to be able to know if I stop doing everything right now, I have enough,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
Because I feel like that's the power number or the power of choice number. Once you cross that line, you can still work, you can still do whatever, but there's a different mentality when you know you're there, right? So now when you ask people for money or for, hey, I want you to buy this or do this or what have you, you actually, you become a little less um, dependent on the answer. You want them to say yes, of course, but because you're coming in with different energy of sufficiency and not of needing more, uh, people are going to respond differently to you. So I think it's really important that number one, we define what that number looks like and understand all the things that come together to play into that, and then understand how are you going to get there. That blueprint will really, really give you peace of mind because then you're just executing a plan as opposed to trying to figure it out again every year. And to give you a point on that, I had a business owner work with me. I worked with him for 12 years. And every year he was 5 years from retirement, okay? So and then, so we worked together and he got a couple offers on his business and he kept saying, "I'm gonna just work another year because then I can make another 100, I can make another 200, I can make whatever thousands of dollars more when I sell my business." And I said, well, how much do you need?
Yeah.
Let's sit down and figure out the lifestyle you want to need, what that will be, da da da, and how much do you need so that maybe that number is enough. You don't have to keep working for another year to keep trying to make it up worth a little bit more, right? So that because that piece he ended up it didn't end well, but you know what I mean? Like, and he could have.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think there's a big distinction when you're doing something because you want to or it's by choice versus doing something
Mm-hmm.
because you feel forced to do it. And the
Yeah.
irony is it could be the same thing, but the mentality is totally different if you feel like you have to do it versus you're doing it because you choose to do it. And so,
Yeah.
that's obviously a really important point, and I think it's hard sometimes for people to let go.
Hmm.
I worked in my younger life. I actually had a brick and mortar business where we built
Okay.
custom configured PCs and we shipped them
Hmm.
around the country and we advertised in the back of magazines. This is all pre-internet. And one of the interesting things is I knew the building manager really well, and one of the other guys in the building was the founder of a convenience store chain, and he had retired. He was worth a lot of money. He put an offer on the building to buy the building, so the building manager knew this guy's net worth, and he said to him, you're 60 something or whatever he was at the time, 70 years old. He says, I don't understand why you're still working, because you have all this. And he said, well, listen, I've started this new business with my son. I'm teaching him how to run a business, and I get to work with my son, my adult son, every single day and spend time with him. He said, how like long do you think you can sit on the beaches of Fiji sipping mai
Hmm.
tais before you're like, you got to do what you want to do. And
Yeah.
even though it seemed like work to the building manager, the guy was
Yeah.
like, I get to be with my son every single day. And this, I would do this, I would pay to do this, let alone, worrying about making money. So it wasn't for him about how much money he had. It was about the lifestyle that he wanted. And that was the thing that he wanted to do. So I think it's important
Absolutely.
to get that clarity on that kind of stuff too, for sure.
Yeah. Very much so.
So tell us, where could we find you? Where can we find your programs and your
Mm,
services?
absolutely. So to sign up for the challenge, you can go to uh, bottleneck and we can get you signed up. Our next one's going to run, I think it's going to run in August.
Okay.
And then we have, if you go and link in with me on LinkedIn, Wendy Brookhouse on LinkedIn, and my website is blackstarwealth.com. And we would love to hear from you.
Awesome. So my last question that I always have to ask is, what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Is understanding before you need the rest before you do a push. So if you go into a push already tired, you at the end of the 90-day push, it's done. Versus go into a 90-day push refreshed, ready to tackle things. You're more creative, you're more ready to do things, and so that'll really really help you get to the next level.
Yeah, I think that sort of downtime component is something
Mm,
that sometimes as entrepreneurs we struggle with, but it is
yeah,
rejuvenating. It is super important. I know
yeah,
for me, I've been working quite a bit. Just the opportunity to go with my son to a soccer tournament in West Virginia. We're
mhm,
down there for 4 days. I'm doing a
yeah,
little bit of stuff here and there, but I'm not working. I'm doing his thing. And when I come
mm,
back, even that is rejuvenating. I've got, new enthusiasm. I feel better just for having broken away and being out of the environment for a while as well.
right.
So I think it's a really great advice. So, with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Wendy, for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit blackstarwealth.com to find her programs and learn how to maximize all your assets with a free consultation. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, remember, no matter what you want from your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.